So as we continue with issue number 2 of Age of Ultron, I think you guys are actually going to find this story extremely interesting and well worth our discussion, because what this is going to do is give us more of an idea of what all's going on here. And this is where I say this story was able to capitalize on the Days of Future Past, because again, the Days of Future Past gave us a very, very small glimpse into what life was like in New York, gave us a very small glimpse into what the future was like. But where Days of Future Past gave us this tiny window, Age of Ultron gives us this massive experience, this massive picture of just how bad off the world is. And what we see as we start with issue number 2 is that we're actually in San Francisco rather than New York, and we're picking up with some woman as she's navigating her way through what appears to be a completely ravaged San Francisco. And again, we see various bodies strewn everywhere, and this really just kind of goes to indicate to us that this city's been absolutely destroyed. But what we also see is that there are Ultron robots that are simply just traversing through the city. And again, based on what we saw with the events in New York, the Ultron robots seem to be just traveling from one place to another, attempting to kill any sort of human life form that they find. And again, this is tied into our discussion on Ultron. And if you haven't seen it, of course, I would suggest that you guys go back and watch it. But with our discussion on Ultron, we had talked about how almost immediately after Ultron was created, that he developed an insane hatred for not only Hank Pym, but for humanity as well. And so it seems as though all these Ultron robots exist to do is to traverse whatever location Ultron has taken over and to destroy any and all organic life forms. And with the actions of this woman, this is very interesting here. What we see is that she seems to have found a location to hide at, maybe hiding among the dead, which tells us that perhaps these Ultron robots can't differentiate between the humans who have been killed and the humans who are alive, or perhaps she's buried herself so far under that they're unable to penetrate the dead humans in order to actually see that she's alive. But again, once the Ultron robots have passed, she reemerges from these corpses, but almost immediately after she does, some individual pulls a gun on her. And so what this man says is that she's searching for something. He believes that she may have something, that she's got a car, that she's got food, but whatever it is that she has, he demands it. And she turns around and asks him where it is that he got this gun. And what we see taking place here is that more or less this man, while he initially starts off confident with a gun pointed at her, that the longer this conversation goes on, the more shaken he becomes, indicating to us that this man's not nearly as confident as he appears. And this seems to be something that this woman is able to pick up on. She points out that this man's a coward, and she reveals herself. And what we see is that this woman is actually Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, and that her face is disfigured. Now, most likely it's disfigured due to the result of maybe some kind of conflict with the Ultron robots, or the fact that maybe there was a firefight. We don't really know. But all we do know here is that her physical appearance has changed. And this man is a little surprised by this. He's a little caught off guard by the fact that that her face is disfigured. And so again, as this man is trying to get her to hand over whatever it is that she has, this guy is in turn shot in the head. And initially, Natasha Romanoff doesn't really know what to do. She's kind of surprised by this. But then we see that she uses sign language to communicate with somebody up on a roof. Now, we don't know exactly who this man is at first, but what we learn is that this is Mark Spector. This is Moon Knight. And so what we learn is that for the most part, it seems as though Moon Knight and Natasha Romanoff have formed this kind of alliance where the two of them are trying to work together to figure out what it is that's going on, or at the very least, to simply just stay alive. And at this point, Natasha Romanoff does really the only thing she can, which is to loot the corpse of this man, to take what he has, and to move forward. Natasha Romanoff and Mark Spector agree to meet at a safe house. And again, we're not exactly sure what this safe house is, but I would go as far as to suspect that it's one of Nick Fury's safe houses. But as Natasha Romanoff is making her way, we see that one of the Ultron robots is in an alleyway and appears to be telling some individuals to either submit or to perish. And these individuals run for it. They immediately try to bail out, but as soon as they do, they're all totally incinerated. They're immediately killed off. Now, Natasha Romanoff is able to stay hidden. She's able to stay away from this and allow this event to take place. And while it does seem, I guess, a little cold and calculating, it really is the only way for her to stay alive. And again, this points to just how dire the situation is, that almost immediately after any human is spotted, they're killed off by these Ultron robots. From here, we pick up with Natasha Romanoff as she enters some kind of a barber shop. And again, this is very, I guess, reminiscent of the early days in Captain America comics, when he and the Falcon had transitioned to the basement of a barber shop when we had our discussion during the Infinity Gauntlet about Quasar, about Wendell Vaughn. And again, it seems as though they're descending down into a safe house, into some place that's very well hidden. And Mark Spector is meeting her there. And Mark Spector tells her, for the most part, that this situation that they're in, this place that they're in, is more or less the safest place for them to be at. There's really the safest location they can get, that every day things are getting worse and worse, that more and more people are dying. And so we see that this sort of wall has been created where we see various superheroes who have been pinned here. Now, we don't know exactly whether or not all these individuals are dead, or if all these individuals are alive, or if maybe some of them are dead and some of them are alive. We're not 100% sure. There are some people here that we would think wouldn't be affected by this. For example, the Silver Surfer. We would think that this is largely an Earthbound event, and the Silver Surfer is largely in a beyond the Earth kind of character, where he simply only gets involved on the planet Earth if there's some major sort of crisis going on here. But we also see people like the Wasp, Luke Cage, who we know is alive, the Sentry, Robert Reynolds, Black Bolt. And so for the most part, we're led to believe that maybe these individuals are alive. But again, this is just kind of up for debate here. What we also learn is that this is indeed Nick Fury's, or one of Nick Fury's secret hideouts, and that while Nick Fury has a large majority of them all around in different locations, that again, this is probably one that most people don't know about. And the reason why Natasha Romanoff tells us this is the case is because Nick Fury never kept them written down. He never actually left a paper trail for anybody to follow. And so because of that, no one knows about this safe house except for those individuals that Nick Fury may have told, or those individuals who, for whatever reason, had simply just stumbled upon it. Now, whether or not it's possible that Ultron could find this place by interrogating other people who may have known where it is something we don't know. But I would go as far as to say that I doubt the Ultron robots would go as far as to interrogate somebody and then track down two humans, when it's inevitable that they would most likely die out of starvation or dehydration eventually due to a lack of resources as time goes on. But from here, we transition back to Central Park, back to Peter Parker. And what we get with Peter Parker is actually a really cool story here. Peter Parker more or less gives us this idea of what's going on from his perspective, in the sense that we learn how everything began to unfold here. And what Peter Parker tells us is that this all started while he was asleep, that he was simply just in his apartment, presumably the night after or I guess the day after he had spent all night long parading around as Spider-Man and fighting various criminals here and there. But what wakes him up is this kind of explosion, this massive shift. And when he looks out the window, he realizes that some giant machine is tearing through New York. And as things progress, as panic begins to reign, that he's trying to figure out what it is that's going on. Now, for the most part, this is about as in-depth as our story with Peter Parker goes in this comic. But what Peter Parker also tells us is that this seems to be everywhere, that there is no safe place. There is no military. There's no Washington, D.C., that everything is gone here. The other question that he answers is the question that everybody's asking of how it was that he was kidnapped and why he was kidnapped. And Peter Parker says he doesn't know. He says that for the most part, all he knows is that as he was trying to figure out what was going on, as he was trying to save various people, that his spider sense didn't even go off, that some kind of a flashbang initiated, and he woke up tied up to a chair. But what he also tells us is that he had heard some of the guards talking, some of the people holding on to him, or what it was that they were saying, and they were saying things like they had struck a deal with Ultron, that they were going to take people into Ultron, and Ultron would in turn leave them alone. Now, of course, the question that everybody asks is, why would Ultron do this? Why would Ultron care about what it is that's going on with various people? Or even if he did have a desire to eradicate humanity, why is it that he would work with people? Why wouldn't he simply just eradicate them on sight? And Spider-Man says that he doesn't know. He has no real idea what it is that's taking place here. He has no real idea why it is that Ultron would get involved with humans if what he wanted to do was kill humans in the first place. And so from here, we see this kind of speculation taking place where various people are trying to figure out what's going on, where various people are trying to discuss what it is that might take place. But what we also see Spider-Man saying, or I guess asking, is what it is that they're going to do, what the next step is, what kind of plan it is that everybody has. But what Tony Stark says is that their only real plan is to survive. And Peter Parker says that surviving isn't doing anything, that they have to do something. And Captain America agrees. Captain America jumps up and says that the reason why nothing had been done was because they didn't have a plan, or at least not until now. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, let me know, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.